Hello, and welcome to the Weekly Scroll podcast brought to you by the Adventure Archive. My name is Ryan.
And I'm Warp Mongoose.
And with us today, we have a special guest, Emiel Boven. How you doing this morning, Emiel?
Hey, hi, I'm good. How are you guys?
Great. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, not too bad.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I love the intro. Like, we haven't been talking like 15 minutes. Every week it cracks me up. It's my favorite part. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, who are you? What have you done? Why do people know you?
I've been making role-playing games for like 2 years now, almost. I wrote Durf, which is this like little OSR, like my own like OSR heartbreaker. And like I did like the illustrations for that, and I think like most people know me for that, I guess. And lately, more people starting to like know me from the Electrum Archive, which is this like little bit bigger zine series about like a science fantasy setting that I'm working on. So that's me.
That's it. Yeah, Durf is obviously the first thing I saw from you. I think I saw it on the LFOSR store first, probably, and I gotta say I fell in love with it immediately. Like, it's so good, it's so clever, like so many parts of it. It's like really like simple, but like supply, like we'll get into that kind of stuff, but it is got to be one of my favorite games. I think this was in like my top 5 for last year when we went over all the years, but like this was unquestionably like such an amazing game, and the fact that you do all the illustrations for it too, the style is awesome.
Oh, thank you so much.
So this is your first game?
It's like my first like role-playing game. Like I did a little bit of like video game design and stuff beforehand, but this is my first actual like role-playing game. Yeah, I've been I worked on it in like 2022 when I was playing like old school essentials basically with my my personal group. And I just noticed like some of these things could be a little bit like cleaner basically. And I'd like try to like write some of that and some my own rule set down and see like what I can tweak and how to change it. And eventually that like grew into Durf. And a lot of people like seem to respond like very positively like on it. So yeah,
it is incredibly clean, and it's a great example. You have like, if we go to like your itch page, you have so much supplemental stuff for Durf. There's just like so many things you can do.
But like that's not all by me though. That's like by a variety of like different creators.
Nice, but it's cool to see there's so much support for the system. It's like, oh, I can
definitely
pick this up and play a ton.
Yeah, it's very simple and like very easy to like just pick up and like run with it.
Did you guys do a jam last year?
We did like a jam in 2021, and we did one last year in like at the end of October, I believe. Yeah.
Nice. So you got like a bunch of support from the community with a bunch of other supplemental stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like there were like a bunch of different like various takes on like how you could use the Durf rules in like different settings. I think we had like a space one and like a cowboy one, and there's like a lot of different versions of it now, which is really cool. Yeah.
Cowboy Durf, I'm into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great.
Hey, listen, there's been a lot of cowboy stuff coming out lately, and I'm for it. Listen, I'm a big fan. Now, I guess, I mean, obviously, I love Durf, and I can tell you why I love it. But why do you think people responded so well to the game? Like, what do you think about it, or have people talked to you about that got so much of a response to it?
Yeah, I think like it's of course it's hard to say like what exactly like people like about it, but I think the few things that I hear the most are like the layout is pretty simple, so you can like get down to the rules like really quick, and like the pages, like I think the core rules are just like 2 pages, just like one spread, so like you have everything you need on like one 2-page spread. So it just feels like a very nice break from some of the other like OSR heartbreakers that are out there that are very that have like a lot of like extra text around things, and just they don't say that much sometimes. And I think that helps, and just like the overall aesthetic, just like it just looks nice, it looks attractive,
It
I
is
think
very
that
like
helps.
clean
Yeah.
to look at. Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, your art style, like I said, it's cool and has a little bit of like cute to it too, that just really, like, look at this little guy, look at the little guy on the front of Wizardry, like that's just, it looks fantastic. But then, you know, you have things like the skull on the back, like you know, I honestly think that really pulled into like the way that you incorporate both your art style and you know, the very clean layout. Obviously we talked about this one before, you know, and we were talking about the other variations of it. Star Derf was another one. Did you do the cover art for that one as well?
No, I didn't. But that was like somebody who did like a riff on like my original cover art for Derf. Yeah.
Oh, I was
Nice.
gonna say it looks like dead
It looks
on. So
good.
they did yeah. So, you know, obviously, you know, we're talking about Derf. We love Derf. We love that. But you also have another zine, the Electrum Archive.
Yes.
So Electrum Archive issue 2 is currently funding on Kickstarter, but this is issue
Yeah.
1. So what made you, I guess, do... Because when I first saw the Electrum Archive, I kind of assumed it was just an expanded world for the rules of Derf, but it's not. It's a very, I want to say a very different game, but it is a different game. What inspired you to do something pretty different as far as even just like the core rules for the Electrum Archive?
Well, originally it started actually as a setting for Derf, but then I just found like the setting is pretty specific. Like for the people who don't know, the setting of like the Electrum Archive, it takes place on Orn, which is this planet where there are like where magic is basically done by inhaling alien ink. Um, and because like the like economy of like experience points and gaining treasure and stuff is like very much tied together in Derf. And the magic works very differently in Derf. So I like try to, so I've eventually like found out that I kind of have to like pivot to like a new system to make it work the way I wanted to do it. So yeah, like it started as like a system for Derf, but it kind of like outgrew like that system basically. Yeah.
Very cool. What was like
Gotcha.
what? So is Orange just like your world that you were running that you just slowly built on top of, and iterated on to just make this like complete setting, or did you have a clear image
Um,
for what it was when you set out?
well, it's definitely something that has grown like over time. Um, I had like just like an ID for it of like the ink and like inhaling that and like doing magic with it and having this like um apocalyptic world like a little bit like inspired by like Dark Sun and like Morrowind. Like, it's very alien, but there's like this history to it. Um yeah, and so like I had this ID and I basically just I put it up on Itch for Itch funding. I think in like start of like 2021. Just to like get people excited and like maybe like get some money to like work on it. Uh, but like at the start, it was just like some ideas I had. It wasn't like a fully finished thing yet. So like definitely has grown over the last year into what it is now, and like things have become like a little bit more concrete. Actually, yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely like a lot of really awesome different settings and like sci-fi inspirations within Orn. That's like really interesting.
Yeah.
So issue 2 is coming out. So issue 1 is just about like it's like overarching view of Orn as a setting, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
issue 2 is focusing on like more of a single location, correct?
Yeah, like the second issue like focuses on Titanport, which is the like basically like a central city in the setting. Basically, it's like it's the very center of the world. And it's a yeah, it's just a big city basically. And like I basically like my idea for the second scene is the first scene is like the foundation. It like shows you everything about the world a little bit. And the second scene will provide you with some more actual adventures you can run and a starting town, basically, which is Titanport in this case.
So the first
Oh
one
yeah.
is kind of more like the base rules and like a gazetteer kind of. Is it so?
Yeah.
Is the thought with future zines that you could always come back to the first one as like the kind of like base for a little bit of information on everything, and then it'll expand individually from there.
Definitely. Yeah, the rest of the
Gotcha.
scenes will definitely like zoom into like the things from the first scene a little more. Yeah.
Cool. That's a cool way to like in-depth explore a setting, like chunk it up like that. that time. I'm really excited to see where it goes further from that. So you have a Kickstarter up right now, and I'm sure it's doing totally okay. I don't know.
Just a
I'm
little
not. I'm
bit?
not sure if you guys are if you're gonna make it or not. What percentage?
I think it's doing well. So like,
Yeah, you're currently well overfunded. Were there stretch goals? I actually should know this, and I don't.
yeah, they're
Yeah, almost
definitely stretch goals.
500,
Oh,
almost
yeah.
500% funded. So I think you made it just a little bit. So what's been the experience, kind of talking about funding a little bit? What was the experience between itch funding issue 1 and then kickstarting issue 2, both in like how you funded it and why you chose to fund the second one on Kickstarter?
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely like itch funding is definitely like a lot more relaxed. Like there's a lot less like stress coming with it, because it you just put something out there and like people can buy it, and if they don't buy it, like that's fine. And on Kickstarter, there's like way more like of a time pressure to like it has to get funded within a certain like time frame, basically. So that like stressed me out a lot, like at the start. And I feel like Kickstarter is a lot more mainstream, so there's a lot more expectations coming from Kickstarter. And itch funding is still like something that is like fairly new, so a lot of people just seem to be fine with it. If it like doesn't work out, and if it works out, that's cool, you know? So yeah, so it's definitely a lot more stressful now, but the flip side is like there's a lot more money you can get from a Kickstarter, which helps if you want to create something. So yeah, like both has its pros and cons. So I will probably, for like a smaller project, I would probably like choose itch funding still, like even now, because I don't know, like a Kickstarter is really stressful. Like it's stressing me out like daily, basically. So
yeah, I could see it's a lot. It seems like it's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, and
done,
like for example, for the itch funding, I only did like digital copies, so that helped. You don't have like the like logistics of like printing the zine and shipping it out and stuff.
Yeah,
I think you can do that on Kickstarter, but like a lot of people like don't really like that if you do it on Kickstarter. So
yeah, it's kind of there for the Kickstarter. It's kind of there for the physical. Yeah, and it
yeah,
seems
definitely.
like from I've backed a couple of Kickstarters. It seems like the major holdups, because I read the updates that people send out, and like printing and shipping just seems like this like nightmare hellscape that people have to deal with. I had a follow-up question. So, can I ask about the standalone adventure zine that's at your 52,000 pound or euro mark?
Yeah.
So the Vein Beneath the Sands. Tell us about that.
Yeah, like Veins Beneath the Sand is actually a scenario that I'm writing for the Electrum Archive issue 2. And it's regardless of if we hit like the stretch goal or not, like it will be in the zine. Like the stretch goal is basically for the like so I can like lift it out of the zine and make it its own little zine, basically.
Oh, cool.
So we have more room in like the original zine for other stuff, basically. Very but like
cool.
The scenario is a like on Orn, like the ink comes from like the like aliens, which are called like the Elders, which are like this ancient alien race which brought the humans to this planet, and like there are basically like, all these old structures dotted over the planet of this like mysterious race that like vanished like long ago. Yeah, and Veins Beneath the Sand is like a scenario. It's basically just a dungeon crawl of one of those structures in the desert, like surrounding Titanport.
Sick. I'm super stoked. I'm like a real big fan of the setting. I also like a lot of your inspirations for the setting are also some of my favorite stuff. Like I really enjoyed the Starmine Archives. I'm a huge Kill 6 Billion Demons fan.
Really? I've never heard you talk about Kill 6 Billion.
You've never heard me talk about Kill 6
Not a single time. Yeah, not a single one.
Huge Dune fans. Yeah, I get this. The setting very much scratches a like cool, like specific itch for me. I very much like the whole like science fantasy huffing ink to cast spells. So Orn is kind of split up between like several realms, right? It has like kind of a unique magic system that kind of ties into the splitting of realms, right? You have like kind of the physical plane and kind of the spiritual plane. So can you kind of
Yeah.
elaborate, like, so when you're huffing this elder ink, when you're huffing gasoline to your weird wizard stuff, like what is happening in that?
Like how I like see it, it's basically like if you would enter like a room of like a lot of like people talking without actually physically entering the room. So you just like start hearing all these like different spirits and stuff without actually seeing them. And if you want to cast spells, like the warlocks, for example, in the setting can use this, like ability of like inhaling the ink to cast those spells because they can like then call through to like the spirits in that room they enter, uh, and like get powers from them basically. So yeah, it's like part of your conscience is basically like fading into like a little bit of another realm and like experiencing some aspects of it, but not fully.
Nice. Very cool.
Nice.
It's so perfect. It's a good weird. It's like it is odd, and it's like a odd in a very good way. And you're like, okay, yeah, this totally works for the setting as well. It's cool to see magic done just like another. I like when magic's weird. Magic should be like it's otherworldly. It is strange. It should not be like, yeah, I just have fancy and I burn my 3rd level spell slot.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think magic should be weird. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have issue 2 that has Titan port. What, like, if you can or want to talk about it, what would your next issue, what would you want it to be about?
Well, there's still like a bit like hole in the setting, which is like the Sunless Princedoms, which is the basically the Underdark of the setting. Um, I originally wanted to like add that in like the first issue as well to have like a complete overview of the setting, but the first issue is already like 72 pages. It's like a pretty thick scene.
It's a
So
thick boy.
like eventually, so eventually I just had to cut that. And yeah, like the second scene, I really wanted that to be like the sort of like the starting box with like pre-made adventure stuff that I didn't have room for the first issue. So the third issue will probably be just like an exploration of like the Sunless Kingdoms, princedoms, and the like insect people that live there. So yeah, I'm really
that's
like
right.
interested in like exploring that.
It's is it the ear or something? It's the
ear,
previous. Yeah. Okay, cool, awesome. I was like, I've obviously read the Electrum Archive, but I was like, hey, wait, Sunless Kingdom. Okay, yeah, insect people.
Mhm.
Also sick. Underground insect people that are plotting to get back their rule, bring back their massive empire.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like real life.
That's one thing I really love about the first zine too. Like, I've read a couple of RPG books, and some gazetteers too, and I think it's a hard kind of thing to hit the nail on the head correctly with a gazetteer, where sometimes you feel like something didn't get enough love or it gets too much love. I feel like you did a really, really amazing job with kind of giving everything a nice feeling overview. We're going to go over this obviously in a little bit, but the plot hooks and encounters for each one really helps flesh it out without having to write like pages of lore. But even the brief timeline of the world is so great. And
the timeline's pretty good. Yeah,
it's just like 5 little paragraphs and you get so much for it. And basically, I mean, and tell me if I'm completely wrong, it's like, these aliens bring humans here, mysteriously disappear after they wipe out the people that are already here, and then humans just kind of fuck it up for a while until spores come and destroy everything, right? And then now we're now.
Yeah. That's basically the setting. Yeah.
So there's a whole huge page of inspirations on the back, but when and where did this start? Like, was there a point where you remember being like, Titanport was the first thing I started writing, or the Underdark, these bug people were the first thing that really got it going? Like, what was the first thing that really triggered what it became?
Well, like it started as like a setting for Durf, and specifically it was an adventure I was writing for Durf, which was centered around Titanport, and specifically about like the Titan that like sits at the center, and like a little bit of like fuckery with the insect people, actually, like the air like tunneling like beneath Titanport. So that's like probably like the start of it, was just like that adventure, and just like, hey, like what if there were like bug people and like this big like giant sitting in the center of town. Yeah, like the ink wasn't like a thing yet, and like it was just like a desert city basically with like a big boy in the middle. Yeah. And eventually that like grew through like just thinking about it and like expanding it with like interesting magic and stuff.
Very cool. Yeah, Titan, like the Titan and Titan port, like it's very iconic, right? It stands out very well. It's obviously right over my shoulder. But in the original, like there's one panel, I think, when you're talking about the Electrum C in the Electrum Archive 1, where it's like a guy standing on a ridge and like looking out, and you can see like Titan port from him. It's just this gigantic,
yeah, that one. Yeah,
I love that piece, man. That piece slaps. It's like such a distinct and like it's a good example of how to make like a very distinct city, right? Because other than that, it's pretty much just a city, more or less. Right? But the feature of the statue stands out, makes it so identifiable. Very cool.
Yeah, no,
I'm obviously very stoked. I have no question. I'm just telling you I'm stoked, you know?
Yeah, that's fair. That's allowed.
Good job. Here's a thumbs up.
Thank you so much.
One of the things I like about the way that you write as well, because you not only did like the writing, also the layout, which is beautiful. I mean, you know, when I see this and it's like, oh, this is my first zine and this is just my second project I did. Like it's like, you know, but one of the things I really love is the forward and the notes on science fantasy right on the first page, because I enjoy science fantasy. I have mixed feelings sometimes about science fiction and science fantasy because I'm a fucking edgelord piece of shit.
You hate Eberron, right? So
I do very much, like a whole lot. I do. But the note that you have here on science fantasy, I really, really enjoy, because you specifically say the great thing about science fantasy and this setting in general is because of the way that the magic works and because of the way that the cities work, and just the populations too, you can go from one end of that spectrum all the way to the other. If you want to go hardcore science with portals and elder tech and stuff like that, you absolutely can. And if you want to get as far away from that as you want and be pure fantasy, you absolutely can. Is that part of why you wanted to do something science fantasy, because you wanted that wide spectrum? Or was that just as you were building it, it was just something that's just like, it gives you the opportunity to do kind of whatever you want?
Yeah, like I think it was always like part of the reason. But also just like because it's like a little bit weird and it's just like it's interesting to have like this like medieval setting and then like have alien spaceships buried beneath the sand basically. Like that's just a fun like thing to like throw at players and like let them like go wild with.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah. Hunter and I were talking about this before. There's like some of my favorite stuff is like, I don't know what it's really called, but I call it future past, where it's like the past technology was a lot more advanced than the current technology and people are like finding it. It's kind of like Book of the New Sun, which I know is in here and stuff like that, where you slowly realize that it's like, oh, this is like advanced technology these medieval people are just kind of like fucking around in. So like that is a really, really enjoyable part of science fantasy that you've done a really, really good job of bringing forward in the Electrum Archive. So again, this is just like another big kudos. We love the stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think it's also like partly because I really like the Elder Scrolls Morrowind, which has like the Dwemer ruins, which are like compared to like the Dwemer ruins in Skyrim, they're like way more like sciencey with like light bulbs and stuff and like the robots and stuff. So it's like, and I really like that aspect of like a weird setting, which is fantasy but having these old ruins of like a more advanced civilization.
Yeah, Morrowind's infinitely more weird and alien as you're traveling across it than like any of the other Elder Scrolls games ended up being.
Definitely. Yeah.
You know,
I've never played Morrowind.
It's hard to go back and play it now because it visually is so brutal. But man, it's
story
fucking good.
Yep.
Yeah,
I'll have to try it anyway. So backtracking pretty far. So DERF has a regular edition. It has an LFOSR handcrafted edition. You know we love Leo here on the show. And then you put out the Wizardry little guy here too. What was the reason for this? Like what made you want to do like a little zine with just like the alternative rules and stuff in it?
Yeah, like I've been like I wrote DERF like pretty early in like like when I like were just like starting out with like making RPGs. So like half of the art in there is also just me like trying to like draw things like for the first time in like a while, because like just hey, it's the OSR, like people are making DIY stuff, so I can try, you know. Um, and so with the system, there are a lot of things that I like in hindsight would have done differently. And wizardry is sort of my way of like fixing the magic in Durf to make it a little bit more interesting for like the magic user characters to like find new spells and like evolve their like repertoire of like things they can do basically.
Gotcha.
Very cool.
And with the Wizardry Zine too, there was a whole bundle of your stuff that Eco with the Lost Bay put out. How did that all come about? With like, did you know Eco before that? Did he approach you, or how did we get all of this awesome stuff in one big silver envelope?
Yeah, Eco and I like we're good friends. We're in the Good Sleep Collective together, which is like this little like collective of RPG creators in the, I think it's GMT+1 time zone. It's just like this sliver of like Europe and then Africa below it and stuff, which is um it's the West, but it's not like the UK or like America, basically. So one of the things we like talked about a lot is like we're in like a lot of Discord of like English speaking folks, which are then like online on like times we're not online, and we have to catch up on a lot of stuff. So we basically made our own little group where we can just like shoot a message and directly get a response without having to wait like while we're sleeping, you know. So yeah, and Eco's in there as well because he's like he's also like from like the same like area a little bit. And yeah, like we've just like chatted like for a while already, and like I did like the podcast episode with him, and he's just like a very nice guy. So
Oh,
yeah,
love
eventually he
Eco.
was just
Yeah,
send me a message of like, hey, you want to do like the bundle? And I was like, yeah, sure, like
Yeah.
that sounds cool.
Very cool.
yeah. Yeah, Ego's a great guy, good friend of the show. Really, for those that don't know, now that we're talking about the Lost Bay podcast, please go listen to it. He's a super great guy. That's a lot
It's
of
really good.
great content there with some definitely a much better interviewer than we are, because we just kind of like, you know, fumble our way through this with post-it notes and stuff.
But he edits it. He edits it. So
See, we don't edit at all.
you know? Like...
We literally don't edit at all. So there you go. I put a little music at the beginning and end and say it is yours. People do with it what you will. I guess a question I've always wanted to know too, and I think we touched on it a little bit on stream, is but what is the cult of the Lizard King?
Yeah, that's basically my attempt at like branding. So it's like instead of by name, I should probably publish things under like a publisher. So it's just basically a name like for publishing my own games. And maybe in the future I would like to like publish things for other people, like if I have the funds for that and like can help them like make their thing happen. But for now it's just like my publishing name, I guess. So yeah.
Okay. And what was why the Lizard King? What made you want to do that?
I don't know. It sounds fun. It sounds cool. Like
say,
you can have like a little cool. Like lizard with a fun like crown in the logo. Like that's half of it basically.
I respect that. It does sound very cool. So
and it looks very cool too.
Very catchy.
So, I mean,
you know.
Yeah. Gosh, we're bouncing all over the place now because the Red Bull is kicking in.
There we go.
There we go. So we're going all over the place. So as we talked about the Electrum Archive issue 2, as we said, I mean, it's super funded. We still got about 10 days left. We're hitting a lot of the stretch goals. And one of the ones we did talk about was the, getting the zine into something else. Are there any of the other stretch goals that, we might see, even if they don't hit the unlock in like different forms or not? Like, are we gonna any of like the Faces of Orin? I know we're probably gonna get to that one, but is the bestiary thing that could potentially happen in the future?
Yeah, I'm definitely like, just if we don't hit it like this time, I will just like move it to the next like Kickstarter, like well eventually we'll hit it, and by that time it probably will be a lot bigger, because like there are a lot more zines that I can include. But it's something I really want to do because the bestiary in the first one is like there's like a few pages, but
Yeah.
like almost none of the like monsters in there have any art. Like there are like 5 pieces of art or something in there. So I would really like to like make an actual bestiary with like illustrations for each monster. Because like Orn is a pretty specific and weird setting, so having like visual aids for like the monsters you want to portray is like would help, I think.
Yeah, and you have like very unique like monsters in there. I mean, I was I was joking around, my name today was Warp Mongoose, but that's literally in the bestiary, right? And then
Yeah.
yeah, I would love to see the spore vampire,
Mm.
or
But
there's a lot. There's a lot of really unique stuff in here.
Yeah, thank
you know,
you. Like I had a lot of fun with like just like making up like monsters and things that sounded interesting and then like riffing off like, okay, what the fuck would this thing actually do, you know?
well, and to talk about illustrating it, we've talked about your illustrations a bunch of time. Do you have like an arts background? Were you an illustrator, or were you just like, I'm just gonna pick up a pen and just draw some awesome stuff? Like what?
Oh, I officially have a bachelor in creative media and technology, I think. Like I
Okay.
don't exactly know like the title, but it's I went to school to make video games basically.
Okay.
And like specifically for like the visual side of video games, so like 3D modeling and stuff. So I've done that for a while, and like to like make like those things in 3D, you actually like have to sketch a little bit in like 2D as well, to, like get your ideas on paper first. So yeah, like I've always been drawing, but it's only like the last 2 years that I actually like, hey, maybe I can like illustrate things and like do it like more like artistically instead of just like functional drawing, you know?
Mhm.
So yeah, it's been really fun to like explore that and yeah, like grow a little bit like as an illustrator.
Yeah. And like we've said numerous times now, the art style, like you have a really, really great, like simple, clean, unique style that I think really ties in well to like the style of game to really round out your projects. Um, Tangenting once again, we talked about the Electrum Archive being a little bit different than DERF. Mechanically, you said part of the reason was because you want to do magic a little bit different. But one of the things that me and Hunter were kind of spitballing about before we started the episode, and we're going to talk about when we get to read through issue 1 in a second, is it's not just the magic that changed. Like the core functionality really changed. There's more of like a little bit of like an into the odd, like all hits hit kind of thing with the Electrum Archive that wasn't originally in DERF. DERF was a little bit more of like the classic, like to hit roll, but it has that like, opposed combat roll. What made you want to switch from, a little bit more, I don't want to say crunchy because it's still really simple, but from like a to hit system to like an everything hit system? Because it's a pretty distinct game style when you play where everything
Yeah,
hits.
yeah. Um, yeah, I think the main reason was because I wanted to do something that has a little bit more like tactical potential like during the combat because like Durf was wild was pretty simple. Most of like the tactical options you have are just it's just in the fiction basically like oh you have like this kind of sword so you can use it for this and this. Um, so for the Electrum Archive, I want to do something which was a little bit more crunchy with the combat, but also like my rule system's like fairly light. So to combat that, like I try to like remove like rolls wherever I can. So like that's why like eventually like the auto hit system like really worked for that because you don't have to make 2 hit rolls. You just roll for damage, and then I could like just tie a bunch of other stuff in there, which normally you wouldn't do because it would be too many. So
Right.
for example, one of the things I really wanted to try out was like weapon speeds, which is something a lot of systems have tried, and I think they almost always like kind of like fell flat or just like became like bogged down by like too much crunch.
Yeah.
So yeah, like for like the Electrum Archive, I just wanted to like see if I could tie that in like a little bit more of an intuitive way.
Um, And that really ties into the monster creation as well when you have the hits and stuff like that, because your monsters or your beasts are really, really interesting, but the stat blocks are like a line of text or two, but like the stats themselves is like one line with a couple of things on it, pretty much. You know, it's damage, it's this skill roll, which is literally like if they ever need a roll, here's like a number, and that's about it. But it works, it's super clean. And when you have that like auto to hit, it's pretty much just there's your damage roll, just do that. Which one kind of came first? Did you, when you figured out that to hit roll, were you like, oh, so I can make Munsell super system this way, super simple this way, or did it all just kind of evolve together?
Yeah, the monsters in like Durf are also like pretty simple, so like kind of like yeah, it was like a little bit of a continuation of that. And like one of the first iterations of like the Electrum Archive, I had a system similar to the system for NPCs in Ultraviolet Grasslands and the Black City, which has like this table of just like levels and just corresponding stats for each level. But like my editor Eva Islam, she like eventually said like, hey, your stats are so simple, like maybe you should just like write them down for every monster so you can have like a little bit more control over like the feel of each monster and like make them a little bit more interesting. Yeah. Because like the table, like why would you make a table for simplifying it if the stats are already like pretty simple?
Makes sense.
It does. It's so it's so, and that's why I would love to see the bestiary going forward too. Like I really hope we get to the goal this time, but eventually, like you said, we're gonna get to it. One, because I really want to see a book of like all your illustrations, but two, since the monsters are so simple, like one of the things I really enjoy about it is that a lot of what you can do with the monster, or kind of like should do with the monster, is going to be in like the little lore bits, like the intention behind what you wanted to do with the creature. So it'll be really interesting to see how much like lore and flavor of the setting is in the monsters when the stat block is only like, you know, this big and you can have so much of it be lore. Did you have intention? Well, obviously you did when you were making it, but was there a lot of intent in, you said getting the rolls out of the game, but putting those little lore pieces in as many different areas as you can, as opposed to having like big blocks? Is that something you wanted to have in this zine as opposed to just having like a lore book?
Yeah, definitely. Like I really like the Spice like lore books actually, because it's so much stuff, and like half of it you're not gonna use probably. So I really wanted to make like a zine which is basically a gazetteer, but with like actual usable things. So most of the like setting is described through plot hook tables, for example, or encounter tables, like stuff you actually use at the table. And like the weapon entries and like the short descriptions that are there, like I try to like pack them with as much like flavor and like descriptions of like things you can use, like characters you can meet, locations, and stuff you can interact with. Because like I like don't really like, actually like the timeline like that I have in like the book was something that I was like really thinking on, like, is this something I should include? Because this is basically just lore, you know?
Yeah.
But it provides I think I made it like just small, just like the right size of like having a little bit more context without it becoming like, oh, and this year like this king died and then this happened.
It gives good like, context.
Yeah, exactly. It's more like about context than like being a timeline. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's,
so it was definitely like one of my like intentions to like hide as much setting in as little as possible, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, I think one of the things that makes it such a successful zine is because you did really, really well. I mean, it doesn't feel like a lore book. It feels like, you know, exactly what a gazetteer should be, in that not only do you get a lot of information about the setting in a fun way, but as I said before, with all the plot hooks and the encounters and things like that, with the rules being such a small part of it, and so much of the lore being tucked into the archetypes and the monsters and things like that. I mean, I think a lot of lore books and gazetteers fall flat, and all of the kind of pitfalls that can often happen and things like that. You did a really, really amazing job of, you know, knowing beforehand, and pushing them off to the side. It's just, It's a really, really great scene. I'm super excited to go over it, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing after we get done with this interview. So as we talked about, Electrum Archive 2, issue 2, focusing on Titanport, is on Kickstarter right now. So you can just search the Electrum Archive or Emiel Boven on the Kickstarter. But as far as being able to find, DERF or the current issue of the Electrum Archive, is this in physical anywhere that people can still get right now, or is it just in digital?
Right now it's just in digital. Like I did like a print run of like 300 copies, but they're basically sold out everywhere.
They're sold out everywhere. I've been searching this whole time we've been talking. I'm like, I wonder if they're still up anywhere. So,
but like the first issue is available like during the Kickstarter. So I'm trying to use that as like a way to like supply the demand, basically. Yeah.
To reel the people in. Again, I mean, you're only 500% funded with 10 days to go. But yeah, anyone that is looking at the project at all, I highly recommend, if you didn't get the first one, or if you didn't get the first one, to grab it with the second one, because I feel like this is such a good base to build off of the setting, so that in the future you don't need all of this information. You can just get the expanded information. So while it's available, definitely go and grab that. And as far as other places people can find your stuff, I know there's the DERF, there's like a whole just plain DERF website, right? With like all of the like generators and stuff on it. Am I completely making that up, or is that?
Yeah, there's like an online rules reference for DERF, because DERF is like completely free. So there is like a DERF website. I think it's been a while since I updated it. So like, yeah, but there's a DERF website. All of my stuff is just, you can find it on itch, or like just on Twitter. You can like find my stuff. So. Yeah.
And what's your itch?
Emielboven.itch.io, I think that should be it. Like,
yeah, it's funny. We talked last time that no creator
never knows their itch. They're all like
the actual itch address.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. Like, I'm not used to like plugging my stuff. I'm just making things and like throwing it out there.
If you keep making great stuff, you're gonna have to get used to talking to people about your awesome stuff. So, listen, it's been a real pleasure to talk to you. I definitely, I feel like we're just gonna need to bring you back every time you put out a new issue, because they're so great, and we're going to need to go over each one after every time. But seriously, love DERF, love the Electrum Archive. Can't wait to go over it here in just a minute, but super appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm just always happy to like jump on if you want me to talk about the things I make. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
So if you are in the chat, stick around for just a moment. And if you're listening on podcast, much like always, we will attempt to split this into 2 episodes, but we'll let you know if we forget. So we'll be back in just a moment. Thank you so much.